This is the Awful Announcing Podcast. Here's your host, Brandon Contes.
Alrighty, welcome to episode 105 of the Awful Announcing Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Contes, and this week we are joined by a longtime sports announcer who is doing something new for the first time. That is Dave Sims, a sportscaster for more than 4 decades, but he's in his first season as the radio voice of the New York Yankees, replacing John Sterling. And fresh off their Subway Series with the New York Mets, Dave joined us on the Awful Announcing Podcast, where we discussed what it's like to replace somebody like Sterling. We discussed the differences between Yankee fans and Mariners fans, his relationship with WFAN, his relationship with Coach K. He talked about being one of the few full-time black play-by-play voices in Major League Baseball. And Dave also spoke about some of his career achievements and his goals at 72 years old and much more, and what was a really fun conversation. As always, make sure you rate and subscribe to this podcast. Make sure you also subscribe to Awful Announcing's YouTube page and enjoy this week's episode of the Awful Announcing Podcast with guest Dave Sims. All right, he is a longtime Major League Baseball play-by-play announcer, but he is a first-time voice of the New York Yankees. He is Dave Sims. Dave, thanks so much for coming on the Awful Announcing Podcast today. I'll quickly note that the podcast will be out Thursday. We're recording this on Monday, the morning after what I think was as much of a must-win for the Yankees as you can have at this point in the season. Am I overstating that, Dave?
No, not even close. I think that when we get to the end of the season and the playoffs, you're going to look back to July 6th, the Cody Bellinger double play, and the double play that Goldie turned, especially with the team scuffling defensively during this really bad run. Yeah. Those 2 plays are going to really stand out. And I don't think I said that in my wrap up, and I know it was covered in the post-game show.
Did you feel the urgency during the Yankees Sunday afternoon win over the Mets?
Well, yeah. I mean, being in the clubhouse beforehand, I wouldn't say there wasn't any giddiness and there wasn't any, sour. You could read the faces of the guys. They know. I mean, you don't have to overthink this. I mean, you lost 6 straight, and you had a 7-game lead, and you get swept in Toronto, and you want to avoid getting swept by the Mets. So it's all good. You could sort of feel it, but yeah, this win was necessary.
There have certainly been some dull periods during the Subway Series, which started in 1997, but it felt like there was a lot of juice this year. How was calling these games?
I was good. It's the first time, I've watched them over the years. Obviously, I live in New York, and certainly even when I was in Seattle, I would keep an eye on it. I would replay the games, that type of stuff. No, the juice is great. I mean, and it was great riding out there. I take the subway to and from, and it was great to see. As a matter of fact, I saw several couples. I think it was a Korean couple. He had on the Soto jersey, and she had a Yankee thing on. I said, "Oh, so Nick's marriage there. How's everything at home?" They said they were cool, and then another couple came up said the same thing. But it's all in fun, and it was funny when the Yankees would start to get going. Let's go Yankees, and then the organist would start playing "Let's Go Mets," and the Mets fans would drown it out. So it was great. It's it's such a local rivalry, and it's your neighbor and literally your neighbor who's going to be a fan of the other team. It doesn't have the vitriol that you would have for, say, a Yankees Boston or a Yankees. Yeah. It's serious. As a matter of fact, there was some dude getting on the subway the other day. I wish he finally shut up and said, "Hey, where the Yankee fans at, man? Where the Yankee fans?" I said, "Man, am I back home or what?" Riding the 7 train, baby.
Yeah, so it's your first season with the Yankees. You're obviously not new to New York. How is being back on the East Coast after a couple decades out in Seattle?
Yeah, 18 years in Seattle, loved it. Great people, still have a lot of friends out there. Home is home, man. And New York's the #1 market. I've been here my entire professional life, and as a newspaper guy, as a radio talk show host at FAN, at WNBC before that. I've done sports anchoring. So, I mean, it's familiar territory. I know, where to go, how to get there. and most of the people, are sports fans, at least the older generation, they know who I am. And a lot of the younger guys, having watched stuff on YouTube from those viral moments we had in Seattle, they're familiar with me for sure.
What was it hard to leave Seattle after all these years, or it was taking the Yankees job, especially being that New York is home, was that an easy decision?
The answer is B. Then it was New York, and it was coming home. Yeah, at this stage in my life and my career, it couldn't have happened at a better time, and I'm very grateful and thrilled to be here.
Do you have a preference doing television versus radio? Because you were doing TV in Seattle, radio now in New
Yeah,
York.
I was doing. I did I was there 18 years, probably the first 13 years. Well, and let me rephrase. When Dave Niehaus passed, I had about 5 or 6 years where I was doing all TV. Prior to that, I had done like 3 innings of radio, usually just doing color and set up the hi, how are yous and all that stuff. And then the last 5, 6 years, I started getting rotated in. I probably did 55, maybe 60% on TV. But I got enough radio reps that I knew I could, and I knew I could do this job. A, B, I knew that I'd be doing 9 innings, and I'm used to doing 9 innings on TV. So I mean, come on, it's you're not reinventing the wheel. And like I said, I've been lucky in my career. I've done pretty much everything, and this is just another feather in the cap.
I think in other sports, like going from TV to radio is almost considered a downgrade, but it's definitely not the case with baseball. Why is that? Like, why does baseball still have such a loyal radio audience and following?
Baseball on the radio is super personal, and you have to and for what I have to do, weave in stories. But the most important thing: do not miss a pitch. What is happening on the field? You're driving down the car, driving to or from grandma's house, and you want to be able to have a feel for what's going on. And you become really attached to the sound and the pace and the tempo of a radio play-by-play guy. And I know, a lot of people came up, and I still get it. I still hear from people from Seattle saying, "Hey, man, you're the voice of my youth." And from both radio and TV, and it's even more so on radio because every day you're in the kitchen, you're in the car, whatever it is you're doing, it's so intimate because you're hearing that same voice every day, and it's different from TV. And at TV, you're only going to get a couple 3 on cameras anyway. So but the description's way different. You have to describe, and I'm a Marty Glickman disciple, and that means you're going to describe everything.
Has there been any added pressure because you're replacing John Sterling, somebody who became so synonymous with the team?
I don't feel any pressure. I followed Dave Niehaus in Seattle, and he was as big a legend in that northwest part of the country as anybody, in the game. The thing that was interesting about Dave, when this franchise started in '77, it was almost exclusively radio. Then they started working in early mid '80s, working in TV broadcasts, but not like we're used to today, where every game was televised. So, what I was just saying about the connection, the personal connection that you have in radio, doing radio baseball. I mean, Dave was revered like crazy up in the Pacific Northwest. And the same goes for John. I mean, John had an unbelievable run.
Yeah.
Pipes are just, it's a gift, and he's used them beautifully. But pressure, hey, I like what I do. People like what I do. I'm getting paid for it. And, I've won a few awards. And it's not like I'm some dude that just came off the street.
Yeah. Would it have been harder if you were a younger, 35 years old and stepping into?
I'm not 35 anymore, so I don't know.
Yeah.
but I
think at this point in your career, you're so well established that it's maybe easier to be yourself.
No, absolutely. And I would imagine, like, would I have liked to have tackled this at 35 and had the opportunity presented itself? I'd have been all over.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd have hit that hard like a Lawrence Taylor sack. I mean, come on.
Have you spoken to John at all about the job?
Not really.
No.
I talked to him some at two banquets preseason. I've not seen him or heard from him since. I mean, put it this way. John and I are professional colleagues. You know, we don't hang out. We've never hung out. And he was, I got to know John late 70s. I'm covering the Nets when they were playing at Piscataway, playing at Rutgers University. And he was the radio guy, and I was a beat writer. And for like 3 years or whatever, I'd see him, you know, every home game and some of the road games. So, nice, great broadcaster, great pipes, incredible career. And, you know, to be, it's not a bad deal to be following this guy. Here's the thing. Being one of the few black guys in this business, you can't be afraid of anything. You can't. And I got here because I took a shot. I bet on myself that I could do this kind of gig and have this kind of career. And I won. So replacing a legend, you know, it is what it is. Somebody's got to do it. So why not me?
Yeah. When you became the Mariners voice in 2007, I think you were just the third full-time black announcer in league history at that point.
Something like that. The numbers really, I mean, Bill White was the first, and he should be in the Hall of Fame. I saw a visit with Bill after he got the job. Two people, not in a confederation, said, you need to go say hello to Bill and shake his hand and thank him for what he did. And I said, done. And we went down and had a blast. I thanked him profusely. He says, get out of here. You did it yourself. Come on, get. But I said, no, seriously. And, yeah, Bill White was the first. I mean, Kenny Singleton did a great job before, you know, he was in Montreal, and then a long run in New York. And then the numbers start to really get few. And there's few. In terms of guys like Paul Waldman did the Yankees for a while, the late Greg Gumbel did some Yankees on MSG. I mean, it's a short list, man.
And then right now, I think it's just you and Robert Ford with the Houston Astros.
Yeah, Mike Claiborne in St. Louis does the wraparound, the pre and the post, and does a significant amount of play-by-play. All those guys are all really good dudes.
So when did you decide that you wanted to do play-by-play?
Oh heck, I was probably in 8, 9 years old playing board games, and you're too young to remember the old electric football games. So you set the men up, and then you hit this button, and they vibrate, and they scatter, and they go all over. It's just crazy. Card games. I played baseball, you know, little league, and I played D3 ball in college. So, you know, and I knew I wasn't going to the majors, but I wish I could remember who exactly it was. But it says, you know what? Just in case you don't go to the majors, just in case you don't get, you know, drafted. I'm not thinking about maybe you could write about it or broadcast about it. And that sort of solidified everything when I was in high school.
Did it because there were so few black play-by-play voices, like did it seem less attainable because of that? Is that something you thought about when you were younger?
You know, and that's a good question, but I never thought of it that way. I jumped in and started out as an intern at the Philadelphia Inquirer in 1973, part of a program that had kids from all over the country. I was invited back solo in the sports department in 74, graduated in 75. They brought me back again. Actually, I was at the paper, and I was going to do the action line where people write in, hey, I had this soda in New York, but I can't find it in Philadelphia. Can you tell me where I can get it? You know, that kind of stuff. And that was going to lead up to being the lead college writer / columnist at the Inquirer. But then in about a 2-week period, I got an offer from the New York Daily News, the Chicago Daily News, and the Inquirer offer, and I took the Daily News in New York. And Dick Young, the legendary Dick Young, was the guy who brought me in, and then that started my whole New York existence. And you know, the path, you know, things started happening, and you know, right place, right time, and so many things.
Do you feel like a bit of a pioneer or trailblazer in the industry?
You know, I don't put on a coonskin cap or anything like that, and carry a long rifle. But when I've heard from so many young broadcasters, black and white, and especially for the black guys, are like, dude, it's unbelievable. I mean, I want to be like you. You're doing exactly, you know, can we get together? And I've mentored guys over the years, you know, both black and white. I mean, and matter of fact, this coming Friday is the third annual HBCU Swingman Classic, started by Ken Griffey Jr. It's an all-star game for baseball players from historically black colleges and universities. And Junior says, hey, as long as you want to do this game, you're doing it, all right? End of story. Junior and I are good friends. And the last couple of years, especially last year, about 7 or 8 guys were down there. A guy named Adam Gordino does the Black College play-by-play fund, where we give scholarship money to young aspiring black broadcasters. And I like playing a part and paying this thing forward.
How does baseball get to a point where there is more balance and diversity with broadcasters?
Well, continued exposure of the game. Back in, I think it was from the mid 70s, mid 80s, was a 20% plus number of African Americans in Major League Baseball. Now that number's down around 5-6%. And from all the conversations I've had over the last few years, travel ball is probably the biggest thing. And if you want to play an elite travel ball, it's going to cost you like minimum 15 large a summer. And not a lot of kids can do that unless they get sponsorship from somewhere. That has changed. The generational change is unbelievable because, growing up in Philly, you had, Philadelphia Recreation Department. You had leagues all over the place. I graduated to a Babe Ruth league, so I had, if you had to pay $100 for a summer, that was a lot. And so the circumstances have changed. The good news is that I'm told that each year in Major League Draft, the numbers continue to grow with African American players being drafted in the first, second round. And matter of fact, the Angels have the second baseman who was an All-American in Tennessee, and there's a few other guys who have played at high level, major conference teams. They're making their way into the big leagues. Hunter Green's one of my favorite guys, Cincinnati Reds right-hander. He totally gets it. He gives back every January, has kids out to his place in Arizona, and talks to them about how important education is, how important the game is, and they run camps and everything. So he's an absolute beauty, and there's a whole bunch of other guys hopefully on the come.
How is working with Suzyn Waldman, another trailblazer for being one of the few women full-time women announcers in baseball?
Yeah, well, this was easy, and that was part of the charm of getting this job. I mean, we know each other since I met her. Let's see, FAN started. She was the first voice on FAN July 1 of '87, and I was across town at WNBC, and I go to FAN in '89. So we got to know each other a little bit. She was always doing Nick reports or Yankee reports when Eddie Coleman and I were doing the midday show. So, and then once I got the job in '07, there was somebody I knew, in the business, and it was great when we'd get together and Mariners would play the Yankees, and we would talk before, during, and after. So this was a layup. It really was. And I tell you what, biggest advocate I think in the business for me to get this job was Suzyn, and I know this because probably starting from last June to the end of the season, when other announcers would come to town or I'd go to their town. Hey, Suzyn really wants you for that job. Hey, Suzyn really wants. I heard that all the time, man, and it happened.
Had you stayed in touch with people that you worked with at WFAN over the years, like other than Suzyn? I mean, it had been what?
Well, Eddie, I stayed in touch with Eddie.
Yeah.
Eddie's like one of the great guys and one of the great broadcasters. And that was better. I'd run into Chris Russo had me on his when he was still on his TV show on MLB Network. And almost every time we'd come to town, I'd either go over there because I don't live far from their studio, or we'd do something online, video. But that's about it.
Did you like hosting sports radio shows?
Yeah, but once I started doing, I really did. Really loved the WNBC job. And Mike Breen, Dom Chinali were my producers, and we had a great time for like 2.5, almost 3 years. And we had a lot of time to fill, man. If there were no games on, we did 7:30 to midnight.
Wow.
And yeah, that's a lot. So we did round. Yeah. I would do round tables. Let's fill a Yankee beat writer broadcast and get 4 or 5 guys in instead of just chop it up for a couple hours. The Mets, the Knicks, that type of stuff. And boy, I tell you what, we would have pretty much anybody. There was one guy who since passed away. He's a lovely guy, Japanese American guy. I can't remember his last name, but his name was Peter. He's from Newark, and he became a bronze medalist in fencing. And they had all these great conversations about stuff I didn't know, and it was wonderful. One time, Hank Aaron was on with Letterman. We're broadcasting in 30 Rock, and in the in-house TV, it says, Henry Aaron's going to be a guest on Letterman show. So they started taping at 5:30, and I went up. My show was at 7:30, and I remember running upstairs, and I told the guard who I was, and I said, "Where's Henry Aaron going to come? He's going to come out of that door." Henry Aaron came through the door, damn near tackled him. "Mr. Aaron, Dave Sims, I got the show downstairs. If you can give me 5-10 minutes, it'd be great." Blah blah blah. I said, "Yeah, sure." Got in the elevator. I'm in the elevator going, "Are you freaking kidding me?" I'm in the elevator with Henry Aaron. Are you freaking kidding me? And he wound up giving me 20 minutes. And it was awesome. It really was awesome. And then, during that time with WNBC, we started simulcasting with MSG Network. So I had Mays on, I had Mantle on, I had Phil Simms, light of the Giants after they won the Super Bowl. Harry Carson, George Martin, Jim Burt, Phil Simms. We had Pat Summerall on, Bob Trumpy on. I mean, they rolled through, man, and that was a blast. Then I get over to FAN in September '89, and working with Eddie, which was terrific, and he's a good dude, and we both were not. Well, this was way before analytics sort of took over everything, but we were into people's stories, man, and we would, not only we talk to one another, we'd want to talk to the big guys, Pat Riley and all those cats, but we'd also talk to, there's a D3 school. This guy's kicking butt. He's 25-1. Let's talk to him. Hey, what's going on? St. John, Seton Hall, all the big powers. And the thing about, I always used to get a kick out of being on at 10 o'clock. I remember Calipari one time. He says, "Hey, I'm on a recruiting trip and driving through, and I heard you talking about da-da-da-da-da-da," and then we want to talk to him for 15 minutes. Paul Pasqualoni, then the coach at Syracuse football coach, same thing. So these guys are recruiting trips and they're listening to us. So
yeah,
we had a good following. We really did.
When you started doing sports radio, WNBC, then WFAN, did it seem like could you have envisioned the format having this like endless potential that it ended up having?
No, but I know one thing. I was loving the job, man.
Yeah.
At that point, I mean, like I said, I always wanted to be in broadcasting, and I'd done some work in Philly after I left the Daily News. Who could have foreseen what's going on now? It's more. Eddie and I had a different approach. We weren't screamers. We weren't sensationalists. We just liked having conversations and discussions. And as a writer friend of mine out in California says, "You guys didn't assassinate people, And the guy makes an error. What? He's a bad guy. He made an error. Come on. What are we doing here?" So our approach was a lot different, and not. I mean, we would react to things that are happening. Hey, they're not playing well. Here's why. Blah 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 blah. But it wasn't like vitriolic and hateful and oh god, geez, unpleasant to listen to. We didn't go there.
Was there much crossover between shows? Like, did you get to know Mike and the Mad Dog and even Imus at that point?
Imus, I knew Imus because we were at NBC together, WNBC.
Yeah.
And he was always a ball breaker. I would sit in the old studio over at Kaufman Astoria. I would sit in a chair where he sat. So, it would be 10 o'clock, 10:01 or whatever after the update. And if it was my turn, what always happened would be my turn to open the show because we alternated. And I'd start talking and I'd hear the theme music and nothing was coming out. Imus had unplugged the microphone right at the base. Dog, he got me. Imus. I remember my wife got me involved in a charity. I got Imus involved. Became Tomorrow's Children's Fund exploded, and they had a really good run. And having Imus helped really kick it over the top. So I got to know him a little bit. And then at that time, my kids were young, so if we were going 10-2, I was out of there. I didn't hang out with. By that time, I'd already been at the been at the station since 8 o'clock, so I'm not hanging out to hang out.
Yeah.
But we did get to know each other a lot, playing in charity basketball games and softball games, which were a riot. We had a lot of laughs. Eddie C, by the way, corner jump shooter, really good.
It is. It's amazing when you think of some of the play-by-play talent that came from WFAN. Obviously, yourself. You mentioned Mike Breen being a producer at WNBC. Iron Eagle as well. Definitely quite the
Bob Shoes.
The breeding. Yeah, Bob Suzyn. Yeah, quite the breeding ground.
I remember when I started doing Temple football in '90, and I would come back, and I'd have to really start stoking myself up because that first year Temple was really good, 7-4, and I was traveling around the country doing radio play-by-play, not getting paid worth a damn, but whatever, I loved it. And I remember talking to Iron Eagle at that time. He was a desk assistant, and we talk about it. And I said, hey, I really, really like this job doing, here at FAN. I love doing a play-by-play. The juice is totally different. And he was like, yeah, that's what I want to do too. And sure enough, boom, there it is. And he's getting it done, man.
Speaking of WFAN, I'm sure you heard Boomer Esiason being kind of critical when you took a few days off to spend some time back in Seattle. I think that was back in May. And look, to be fair, Boomer, he wasn't saying that you can't take vacation, but he definitely was critical of the timing of it. What did you hear those comments? Did it bother you at all?
Yeah, it wasn't. People in our business, in this line of the business, take time off. I have a son in Seattle, and then with the 3 games I blew off were in Sacramento. If you look at the schedules of just about every broadcaster in the major leagues, they take time off. And it's not like I took time off Labor Day in the middle of the pennant race. It was almost middle May. And I wanted to see my son, and it was the only time we were going to be going out west. And we had some things we had to, take to him, yada, yada, yada. And I was going to make my wife do that. Radio station said, fine, you got X amount of days off. Those are some of the days you want to take off. Hey, you're good. We got you covered. Don't worry about it. Safe travels.
This one was less critical, but you had Howard Stern kind of playfully call you out recently for the Hey Now home run.
Wow,
how was being a topic there.
That wasn't so much a call out. It was like, whoa, what's up with this? And
yeah.
I sent him a video.
Right. He kind of became aware of it.
Yeah. And I was like, dude, really? I said, yeah, you were part of the influence, but the main influence, because I grew up listening to American standards. A guy named Sinatra was pretty good. I got the world on the string. He bangs out the last lyric, hey, now I'm in love. That's where I got it from, okay? That was the main. So he, Howard and the boys, he wasn't familiar with me. And it's so funny because when I was at Satellite News Channel in 82, 83, he said, I don't know, I said something or he saw something or that got his attention, and he started calling me Dave Tank Sims. He probably doesn't even remember that.
Oh, wow.
That was like 1982. So now this happens, and now I know he's on hiatus right now, but my people reached out to his people, said maybe we can do something.
Okay.
I'll gladly come over. No, it's all good. I got no beef with Howard. He got no beef with me. Like he said, the fact that at one point he said, hey, if he's using Hey Now, must be a pretty good guy. So
yeah.
Check that box.
Yeah. Also, speaking of radio, do you know Dr. Joe? I think it was Dr. Joe is the Boomer and Geo caller who about a year ago, and he claimed he was some sort of doctor for the Yankees announcers, right. But then he said Suzyn wanted you to replace John Sterling. Here we are a year later.
It goes back to what I said earlier, and then it was funny when that happened. I think Mariners were in Texas, and Dave Softy Mahler from KJR, I get this text in the morning at like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock Central Time. Dude, have you seen this? And I checked it out, and I went, oh, brother. And then I called Suzyn, and she said, what? And it got, I think she spoke to whoever it was who needed to be spoken to. Again, everything worked out, but that was an interesting part of the journey, if you will, to get to this spot.
Yeah, well, and I think that was really the first time that your name kind of got mentioned as a potential replacement. And then once it did get mentioned, like to Dr. Joe's credit, everybody was like, oh, wow, that actually does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, which was nice. I was very flattered by that. Yeah, it was interesting, man. That created a buzz. It was interesting that, my boss in Seattle, who was a New York area guy, Kevin Martinez, good dude. He he let it go for like 2 days. So he comes in the booth, and I'm sitting there doing what do we need to know? So
do you remember by that point, had you already heard about potentially being in consideration for replacing John at that point when that story came out?
Oh, contact had been made. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Had you thought about the job prior to John retiring? Like, was this something that was of interest?
Well, when he started the season and then bailed, that's when it really became, kind of made it, ooh, this is interesting.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens.
How do Yankee fans compare with Mariners fans?
Well, I have a neighbor. Let's see. I got a neighbor in my building who was so hacked off. I got this email, not mad at me, but Tommy John surgery, get rid of the trainers. Boone, get rid of Boone. Yeah, I said, they go through this stretch every year. You might remember that last year they did win the American League pennant. And if it hadn't been for the worst fifth inning in the history of baseball, who the hell knows what could have happened? But they still won the pennant.
Yeah.
We still got 65. What do we got? 65, 70 games? Nah, probably not that. We've probably about 65 games left. Lots going to happen, pal. Lots going to happen. We've got the trade deadline coming up. So anyway, to answer your question, Yankee fans, God love them. They know what they want, and they want it yesterday. and I tell you what, the passion's unbelievable. And when you, like that 90s crew, the Jeter generation, and all the winning that they did, and guys just grinding, and you had stars, and you had grinders, you had great pitching, you had Mo. I mean, that's a generation like the era from 47 to 64. They're spoiled. And I don't mean that in a derogatory fashion, but it's the truth. Come on. You went all, you grow up like that. I mean, these guys now, their grandfathers watched the Mick, right? They watched Mantle, and their great-grandfathers watched Joe D, and their they watched Babe before that. So the tradition here is, Jim Nance, a tradition like none other. Well, this is a tradition like none other right here, New York Yankees.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, it's a different expectation level.
And let me just say this. Seattle fans I even check attendance. I keep an eye on the box scores periodically. They're drawing well. They're hitting well. They're hitting 248 as we record this. We had hit 248 last year. Could have got to the World Series. They had like 220 or whatever. It's a good fan base, and it's hungry, and they want to get rid of the label. It's the only fan base and only franchise not to appear in a World Series. They dearly want to get rid of that, and I don't blame them.
What do you like better about Seattle? Is there something that the city offers that New York doesn't? I've never been to Seattle.
They're two great cities. Difficult to compare. Their summers are fabulous in that the humidity is way, way better than what we get here in New York. And the days are longer given where they are geographically. It's a great foodie town, just like New York. And outdoor activities, you want to bike, you want to hunt, you want to fish, you want to climb a mountain, it's all there. You want to take ferry rides up to Victoria Island, go up into British Columbia and all that kind of stuff. You're only a few hours from Banded Dunes in Oregon if you got money and you want to play golf. And outdoor wise, it's outstanding, no question about it. I know from talking to the friends of mine up there who were born and raised as well. It does get in the wintertime. It does get dark at feels like it gets dark at 3:30. I'm not into that, but no, it's a great region, man. It really is. It's just a perfect world. It's a shame that Portland doesn't have a team, so at least you have a close-in rival.
Yeah.
Here, New York in the Northeast. I mean, we play cross-hand. Interleague play, Mets, boom. You want to go to Philly, boom. You got Boston, Baltimore, Washington. Even Atlanta's only 2 hours. And Miami's 2.5. Let's call it 3. Same with Tampa. The shortest trip in Seattle is going down now to Sacramento. I was going to say Oakland, but now Sacramento. that travel. I mean, they're consistently 1, 2, or 3 in the air miles every year, and it's a credit to the organization, particularly in these last 5, 6 years, that they've been competitive with that travel. But you know what? It is what it is. You get your rest and recovery. Don't be stupid. You're not hanging out or anything like that. Do what you got to do, and it's paying off. They got a good ball club. Again, pitching leads that ball club right now. Cal Raleigh's having a phenomenal first half. So I'm excited to see a lot of the guys who I know in the club and the organization and the media guys. But this has a chance to be a heck of an interesting series with the Yankees.
We're in July now, more than halfway through the baseball season. I think back to the beginning of the season, the torpedo bat story. How looking back, how overblown was that?
Oh my God.
Some were treating it like it was the next big scandal in baseball, and then now nobody cares anymore. Just a few months later,
they've been using these bats for 3 years, and I'm getting social media DMs and whatnot, or not even DMs. Oh, Yankees cheating again. Hey, shut up! What are you kidding me? And that was the 9 home run game against Milwaukee. Yeah, talk about overreaction. Oh my God! And had it been Tampa Bay, nobody'd say anything. But it was the Yankees, and everybody, they got a red ass because of that.
You mentioned Cal Raleigh. Did you ever? I mean, did he seem like a guy with potential 60 home run power? I mean, we're still a ways away from that, but 35 already at this point. Like he is on that pace.
Yeah. I wish him well. I know that Dan Wilson will DH him as many times as he possibly can. But again, don't forget, he is a platinum glove winner. He's the best defender in baseball last year. Given the rigors of catching, if you told me he was going to hit 30 a year, I'd be thrilled. The fact he's got 35 and not at the break yet is off the chart. And certainly we know from the home run he hit against. Here's a pitch from Acevedo, the one he hit back in 23. You know he's capable, and the fact that he's getting more home runs this year, swinging right hand, man, that's a real boon to him, man, and for the ball club, because he's the most consistent power guy they have.
You've been around Aaron Judge a little bit now. You covered Ichiro, even you mentioned Griffey. You covered him at the end of his career, but who is the biggest star that you covered? Like, did one person have more of an aura about them?
Well, it certainly qualifies. Judge qualifies. Junior qualifies. I mean, my favorite guy is still Nelson Cruz because of boomstick baby. I mean, that guy was 4 or 5 years with the Mariners. I mean, he carried the load and then some. But Ichiro, he's a funny dude. His English is pretty good. He doesn't like to talk to the media necessarily in English, but if you just, yo, Itch, what's up, man? Hey, what's up, my nizzle? What? He's cool. And Judge has that quiet strength. He's not a loud, not a loud talking guy. I asked him the other day. I said, dude, you're playing every day. I said, tell me this. I'm a lot older than you are, so I know how important sleep is to me. But I said, are you getting your 7, 8 hours? He says, I was getting 8, but now I got the little girl that shrunk a little bit. But I do get my time. And what was the other thing he said? I said, when do you take naps? 5, 10, 15, 20-minute naps. He said, can't do it. It doesn't work for me. I said, I understood. No problem. But he's just a good dude. And you know what? Even keeled, if he's 0 for 10, he goes through a stretch where he didn't hit a home run for 5 days. Is he flipping out? No. He goes through a stretch where he's like 2 for 20, and then look out, here he comes. And sure enough, boom, base hit here, boom, base hit, boom, home run going the other way. So he's exceptional, and he's the best player in the game.
Yeah. Just to piggyback off the sleep, I have a 3-year-old, a 1-year-old, and my wife is 8 months pregnant right now. So like I pretty much gave up sleep.
Yeah, dude, you've been busy. Good for you.
Yeah. You were nominated for the Ford C. Frick Award last year. What did even just getting nominated mean?
Oh, so sometime last July, Joe Castiglione, the Hall of Fame radio voice with the Red Sox, good man, good friend. And matter of fact, I was on the ellipse. I would get my workout, and I see this message, congratulations, Dave. And and it says you've been nominated. And then I called him. I said, Joe, what are you pranking me? What are you doing? He says, what are you talking about? You've been nominated to get the Frick Award. I just was like, couldn't say anything. I mean, it was mind blowing. And then once it got out, a lot of my boys from around the country, hopefully if you don't get in this time, hopefully you'll get in at some point. But just to be nominated is off the chart. Absolutely off the chart, man. It really is.
Yeah, very cool. How did you end up co-hosting Coach K's Sirius XM radio show? What's your relationship with him?
Good. When I was at the Daily News covering college hoops, there came a time where I became the president of the local Metropolitan basketball beat writers. And we had these luncheons during the season. I think it was Mondays. Yeah, I think it was Mondays. At late and lamented Mama Leone's restaurant. Google that. It was a great Italian joint. 49th and 8th, I think it was. And all the coaches from the Met area. Mike would come down from West Point. Louis. PJ was at Wagner. Raftery was at Seton Hall. 5 or 10 other guys. If somebody was coming in to play the Garden the next day, they would stop by. And we get a chance to mix and mingle. They tell stories. We report on this, that, and the other thing. So that's what, 76, 77. So flash forward to like 03, 04. My wife, I didn't have the baseball job. My wife and I were doing media coaching. I was busy doing football and basketball. Baseball season was open for me. So we started doing media coaching. We traveled around to D1 programs around the country, and the importance of the media and the importance of how to deal with the media and put your best foot forward, yada, yada, yada. So we got Duke. Mike knew me, and he brought me down, loved it, loved the presentation. And then this guy, John Jackson, came up to me and says, do you have any restrictions to do a national radio show? And at that time, it was Sirius and XM hadn't merged. It was just XM. I said, no, I'm good. What do you got? And he told me. I said, I'm in. Let's do it. And so we did it. It was on XM for 3-4 years, and then they merged with Sirius XM. So I got an 18-year run out of it, 19 years.
Oh, wow.
And we had on, you name an athlete, we had them on.
Yeah.
LeBron, Kobe. We had all the NASCAR winners. We had Mrs. Barbara Bush talk. I forget what she was talking. Something about probably education or something. Arnie Duncan, who was the Secretary of Education under Obama, I believe. We had Martin. We had a guy who was became the Joint Chiefs of Staff because he'd got his postgraduate degree at Duke. Joe Mad, Dusty, Socia, Trout, Dansby Swanson. We had all the, it's Coach K. Come on.
Yeah.
Coach K wants you to come on the show.
Yeah, no one is turning him down. Yeah,
what time? And who was it? Dansby Swanson's a big Duke fan. Trout's a big Duke fan. There's another guy I'm thinking of in a minute. But it was great. So that has helped me, once I get the baseball job. Yo, man, I'm the guy from, hey, how you doing, man? I was Coach say, hey, good to see you. Hey, that was a lot of fun, And I remember one time when we had Socia on, he was still with the Angels. And I see him a few weeks later, spring training, he says, can you believe this freaking guy? He sent me a handwritten thank you note for being on the show. I said, that's Mike, but he won. Come on.
Very cool.
Great. There's some of your youngins there, huh?
Yeah. Do you have a most memorable moment as a broadcaster? Is there one thing that stands out?
The Cal Raleigh home run.
Yeah.
Prior to that was the Felix Hernandez perfecto in 2012. And then the next one was the Haniger's RBI two-run single in game 161 of the 22 season. The next year, Cal hits a home run.
Yep.
Those are the ones that really jump out at me. Also, George Mason upsetting UConn to go to the Final Four in 06 or 07. And I did a good number of AFC and NFC championship games. They have blurred, but those are the moments that really stand out. The interview with Henry Aaron, Mantle, and Mays, or something.
course.
I've got pictures with Mickey and a picture with Willie, and I interacted with Willie a few times during the course of the last 15 years. So, yeah, those are some highlights. Oh, and the other one was there was a sports dinner, Marching Time sports dinner at the Waldorf, and it was a who's who of all the greats. Jack Nicklaus, Walt Frazier, Frank Gifford, and a lot of media guys. And we're standing backstage behind the curtain, Ahmad Rashad. And all of a sudden, coming through the curtain, here comes Jim Brown. And I was like, he's like the baddest. At that time, for me, he's still the greatest football player I ever saw. But he just had this presence, and he was still quite mobile, still getting around well. And he just came over, and guys, jaws dropped. I mean, talking super elite athletes, like, holy shit, Jim Brown. Oh. I had George Costanza moment, though. I just seen, I don't know, I had read something about him recently. I'd seen a clip of a film, and I didn't go, but I just went, oh, so you made any new films lately? And he said, man, all you had to do was say hello. And I never forgot that. I don't mind telling that story because I don't get starstruck, but that was pretty special, especially since I'd gotten his autograph as about a 10-year-old back in 63 or whatever it was when I was gone at an Eagles game. So those are some favorite moments I've had.
Is there? Yeah, for sure. Is there something you'd still like to achieve or accomplish in your career?
Fly ball to left, caught by Dominguez, and that'll do it. The Yankees are World Series champions here in 2025. That would be it.
Yeah.
That would be. Detroit's very good. Houston's on the come. Houston's really established itself. The National League has some really good teams. I mean, the Phillies and the Dodgers. Holy crap! The Mets, if they get their stuff straightened out, it's going to be interesting. I think Detroit and or Houston could be the biggest hurdles for the Yankees in the playoffs. Saying everybody, obviously Detroit and Houston probably going to make it, but I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to having. I always watch the playoffs. I'm looking forward to being in the playoffs for only my second time in my career. So.
Dave, you were great. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet, Brandon. Hey, all the best, man. Good luck with those kids. All the best.
Thank you.
Yeah,
that is Dave Sims. I'm Brandon Contes. This is the Awful Announcing Podcast. Please rate and subscribe to this podcast. Please also subscribe to Awful Announcing's YouTube page. But regardless of how you consume Awful Announcing and the Awful Announcing Podcast, thanks for listening and be good.
Thanks for listening to the Awful Announcing Podcast. For the latest news spanning the sports media landscape and more, check out awfulannouncing.com and follow us at Awful Announcing.